And we are recording. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Thank you for joining us yet again. Today's guest is Brittany Butler. There is a fantastic bio to go with Brittany's past, which we'll get into in a minute. What I want to do first, I want to I should have said before the show, really, I'll probably be asking some questions that I know the answers to, but there are going to be people out there who it's more for the benefit of them. Because there seems to be a lot of confusion if you don't work in the world of intelligence, the difference between a case officer and a kind of a targeting officer and an analyst and that kind of thing. So are you happy to share with us, your role, what you did, and kind of the differences between each role?
Sure, of course. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to be here today with you, Gavin. So at the CIA, we are divided up into kind of three different sections. So there's the director of operations, which is in charge of all the clandestine work that the CIA does, right? So the recruiting and handling of spies abroad. You got the directorate of intelligence, which is basically like all the analytical stuff, the presidential daily brief, things of that nature. You've got, actually, we have four different divisions. Director of Science and Technology. They make all the gadgets, so all the things you see in movies, like the different cars and cameras and cool stuff like that. And then you got the Director of Support, and they help with travel. They can help with fraudulent passports, helping to make up different kind of like disguises, things of that nature. So they help to support operations. So I was the director of operations, and so I was part of the effort to recruit and handle spies abroad. So I was recruited directly out of college to be a case officer, a CIA case officer. And so they are the individuals that spot, recruit, and handle our spies. I subsequently decided to go with a position called a targeting officer, which is basically like a hybrid position where you're helping to target individuals for recruitment operations. So helping to pinpoint who do we need access to, in order to gain foreign intelligence on a foreign government or a terrorist network, something like that. And then helping to provide the actionable targeting leads to recruit that individual, right? So like helping to outline, okay, this is this individual's access, but here's how you could go about recruiting them. Here are some of the vulnerabilities that you could potentially utilize to your benefit. And then obviously, what's the end game here? What are we trying to accomplish by recruiting this individual? So as a targeting officer, you're in charge of that. There's also something called like targeting for the kill capture operations, or the helping to funnel the targeting leads to our drone program. So that's primarily in the war zone. So that's something that we coordinate with our DoD partners, Department of Defense partners on a good deal. We also have a division called the Special Activities Division that's in the Director of Operations. They're kind of our action element coming out of the CIA, capturing, detaining, high value targets. So I would do targeting leads in support of those kind of operations, helping out our special activities branch. So that's kind of what a targeting officer is. An analyst is someone who more kind of collects, they're looking at all the different databases, and they're bringing together all those pieces of intelligence to create a project for policymakers. So policymakers are their primary audience, people like the president, Congress, to inform them on foreign things dealing with foreign intelligence. So it could be something very specific, like what's a leader's stance on this issue, to, okay, what is Al-Qaeda going to be doing in the next 10 years? So it could be like a really strategic assessment. It could be something down in the weeds as to like who is this individual and what to expect from them in the future as far as their foreign policy is concerned. So that's kind of the differences between, but of course there's lots of overlap. So I've been in the field, I've been in the Middle East a good bit, because a lot of my targeting leads have led to recruitment operations. So I've been a part of those recruitment operations. First of all, from the standpoint of I know that target the best because I've found them, but then also that I understand the terrorist network. So as a targeter, you're responsible for being kind of the subject matter expert on a particular target or organization that we are targeting. So I would be going to that meeting as the SME and saying, okay, this guy's information does check out, it doesn't check out. based on what we've done at CIA in terms of collecting other corroborating information. So I was able to kind of validate or dispute a lot of what a potential source was saying just by attending the meeting. So I played a pretty pivotal role in recruitment operations abroad. So hopefully that gives you a little
Brilliant.
broad perspective.
Yeah. So when you're gathering like the POL or patterns of life on kind of your targets, are you starting this from a distance? Are you doing this remotely over, say, the internet and figuring it out from there? Or is there something that when you've ticked enough boxes, you go, right, let's just get out, get some surveillance on this guy and start, building up a bigger picture? What's normally the process for you? How does that normally go?
Yeah, well, it depends on what information we're starting with as a baseline.
Mhm.
If it's pattern of life information, a lot of that is done at the reconnaissance level, at the ground level, by actual individuals collecting that intel. And then, of course, there's the reconnaissance efforts from, from space, from the air. We have, good amount of capabilities in that
Mm.
respect that we're able to pull from that data and create a pattern of life scenario. So yeah, it just depends on what we're working on from the baseline and where we need to get. It's not always you don't always need like the specific every single day, pattern of what this individual is
Mm.
doing, but you need a general sense of, okay, when do these high level meetings happen, right? So you're going
Mhm.
after, a leadership structure, and you're looking at, okay, when can we go after the most people at one time? So when can we get the most bang for our buck? So it just depends on the
Mhm.
situation.
Got you. And to lighten things up a little bit, what was it that kind of inspired you, to start this career off in the CIA? It's not something that like most people kind of. It's not something, I don't know. They go through high school and get asked, "What do you want to do?" And they go, "I want to be a spy." So what was it that kind of led you down the path to choosing this career?
Yeah, so like I said, I was recruited right out of college, and I think that was a lot. It had a lot to do with my experience before I graduated from college. So I did an internship at the American Embassy in Paris for the State Department, and
Mhm.
I was involved in some passport fraud cases. And I didn't know it at that time, but a lot of the individuals that I was working for were actually undercover CIA operatives, and so they kind of pinpointed, hey, this woman might be really good for our efforts as well. So they kind of approached me and they said, hey, have you ever thought about applying to the CIA? And of course, I was like, absolutely not. Wasn't even something that I thought about. I wanted to be a foreign service officer, which is why I did the internship at the American Embassy in Paris. And so I subsequently applied to the CIA on the website, and the rest is history.
Wow. That's it. It's kind of it's fortunate the way it happened because I mean I don't know how many applications that you get over there per annum, and I know over here for the likes of MI6, every time a new Bond movie comes out, the
Yeah.
applications to MI6 kind of skyrocket.
Sure.
Um, is
Sure.
it, sorry.
I said, sure. Yeah, I can see
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah, and of course it's something that kind of 99% of them are generally rejected, and it's usually it kind of works from the inside out with the likes of MI6 and MI5, But and over there, so you've had that. Fortunately, you've been like kind of selected before you've had the job, which is always a bonus. So it's interesting how there's like kind of no history there or no kind of aim to get there, and you've been highlighted for your skills. I really like that. And so somebody saw something in you. Was there somebody who maybe you look at as maybe a mentor who you think, yeah, that person saw something in me enough to have faith in me to put me forward? Do you know who that was?
No, I think what they're looking for is probably not someone who wants to go into spy work. So,
Mm,
oftentimes someone that wants to do that kind of work, they might have the personality of wanting to gain attention for their effort,
mm.
or, maybe they have this false idea of what a spy actually is. Like if you're doing it to be James Bond, unfortunately, there is no James Bond.
Yeah.
Within the CIA. So whenever you're going through the recruitment process, if you were to say something like that, I think that you probably would be disqualified from the process. So I don't. I think they probably went after me because not someone who you would generally think is in intelligence work.
Mhm.
On my background, I mean, I went to a state school. I, was in a sorority. I don't think that I kind of fit the mold for, maybe someone that you might see on the movies of this person is in the CIA.
Mhm.
So I think that was attractive. My foreign language expertise, that I can pick up on foreign languages pretty easily, and
Mm.
I had a really good fluency in French. So when I was first recruited, I've had a meeting with, a very senior case officer, and he just started speaking to me in French about the Gaza Strip. And, I had to explain in French what was going on currently with the Israeli Palestinian conflict. And I think that's probably a pretty unique skill set that I had. And
Mhm.
that I had a really good knowledge of what was going on internationally, but then also I had the foreign uh, language expertise. So, and then of course, they want someone that is adaptable to different cultures and, has a good amount of empathy for other people. I think empathy is probably one of those things that we don't really talk about a lot in intelligence work, but it
Mm.
plays a really big central role, and especially recruiting humans, right? You need to be able to empathize with someone that you're working with, and be able to work towards a common goal, or finding out what that common goal is so that you can work together effectively. And coming in and thinking, you know I know the right way all the time, and that's not going to work. It's not going to work for intelligence operations. You need to be able to see all kind of perspectives, even those who you don't agree with. I mean, you'd have to sit across. I've sat across, people who wanted to kill Americans, right? Like,
Mm.
us. And I'm not saying that I would ever. I mean, of course, I do not agree with that at all. But I have to remain empathetic to their reasonings for why they feel the way they feel, and why they had to join a particular terrorist organization. And I have to sit there and kind of like talk them through that and help to find some common ground between, so that we can work together to further our common goals. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's an awkward conversation to have with civilians, isn't it? When you kind of you have to explain to them that understanding isn't necessarily agreeing. I can sit in a room with somebody and have a conversation. They've got their cause and they've got their beliefs. And just because I know their reasons behind it, and how it led to them being there, doesn't mean to say I agree, but we can still have a cup of tea together. And I think that should be kind of adopted by a lot of people in the world of politics at the moment, where we can have differences of opinions, but without having to kill each other over it.
Right. Absolutely. Yes.
Hmm.
Three more.
So, what was it that so the first time you kind of got yourself inside the wire and you were in Langley, what was it that surprised you the most, more than anything, that when you kind of first arrived to Langley HQ?
I don't think anyone can underplay the sense of danger that you're in some situations, and just how lightly you have to take it when you're in that role. So I worked in a division within the CIA where, people were going to the war zones almost every weekend, right? It was just like you went over, you got your work done, you debriefed some detainees, you helped with some recruitment meetings, and then you flew back to the United States, on Monday or whatever, and just went about your normal life. And
Hmm.
it's sometimes like hard to kind of adjust, like going from like the war zones straight back to civilian life.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was something that they really prepared me for before I went into that line of work. I knew it was a possibility, but I don't think I realized how common it would be, and how, yeah, just normal it became, as part of my everyday life. And it wasn't until I had some friends unfortunately die in the coast suicide
Hmm.
bombing that I realized, wow, this is really dangerous. This is like some really serious work that could get me killed. And I think, especially as I started to kind of have children and things like that, I realized, hey, like I need to be really careful about which assignments I agree to go on. And
Hmm.
oftentimes, especially in the counterterrorism field, you don't feel like you have much of a choice. You're kind of being told things almost like from like almost like a military, officer would tell their subordinates, go do this. So when I had to give pushback, I had to be really confident and really stand my ground, and that wasn't always received well, and ended up being
Hmm.
right position on some operations, but I had to be comfortable, by like kind of pushing back on some things that they asked me to do.
Yeah, definitely. And it really changes your perspective on things when you go to some of these kind of, conflict zones and that kind of thing. And like you say,
Mhm.
you come on tour, they don't prepare you for coming home,
Yeah.
and you still have a kind of mindset, and it's hard to explain, but I've been there myself, and your mind is kind of still in work mode, and you're in a supermarket, and somebody's kicking off because they don't have hot dog flavored Cheetos or something, and you think really, it kind
Yeah.
of you after everything you've just seen a few weeks ago, and think
Right.
it just kind of really it gives you a total different understanding of priorities in people's lives. And I remember like hearing a lot of the time, first world problems was a phrase that was just growing so much between people coming from the industry back to civilian life and going, yeah, first world problems.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally agree and get where you're coming from. And very much like yourself, I started sidestepping certain things when my daughter was born. I thought, right, it's time now. I've put my hand in the fire too many times and not got burned. It's time to kind of back up from it. And I started writing books and teaching and that kind of thing. And when I say teaching, training in like the security and intelligence industry and recruits that are going out and that kind of thing. So with that being said, I know that you've got a book out yourself, which is The Syndicate Spy. I mean, how much of the characters within that are kind of revolving around yourself and your world, and from your own first-hand experience?
Yeah, so I really, whenever I came out of the CIA, I feel like to a large extent, women in intelligence have been given this kind of false narrative that we are these sexual dominatrixes and that our only value is to provide sex for information. And that really honestly pissed me off. And so I wanted to write a story that was more accurate and that
Hmm.
we use the same tactics and intellect to do the job as our male counterparts. But I would argue that it's even more challenging for us because we're oftentimes operating within environments where we're not seen as equal with a man.
Hmm.
And so we had to work extra hard to gain trust, to gain respect, in order to work with those individuals. So I wanted to tell that story. And I believe that the Syndicate Spy is something that helps you to really get into the mindset of what's it like to be a female in intelligence and what kind of battles do you have to fight in order to do that job well. And then I worked, my last assignment at the CIA was in the CTC, so the Counterterrorism Center's Pakistan Afghanistan department. And
Hmm.
I worked a lot on, of course, in Afghanistan, and I became really aware of how the Taliban was treating women. And I won't get into politics or anything, but we can all agree that the Taliban mistreats women a good
Hmm.
amount. And so I really wanted to do something about it when I got out of the CIA. And so I worked for a human rights organization called Women for Afghan Women. And it was through working with those women, these really empowered, strong, resilient Afghan women, that I thought, I'd love to tell the story about Afghan women, about Arab women, not as victims, but as
Hmm.
warriors, as women who go out and get shit done. And so I wanted to write these two female characters. So Juliet Airway is the kind of American CIA kind of operative, and she works hand in hand with Mariam Al Saad, who is this Saudi princess, and she fights for women's rights. And she's actually based off of real people that I've met with and worked with in that culture, and how they kind of put women in charge of the Middle East, and how that changes things, and how that's beneficial for a lot of people, and having a woman in power in the Middle East. So I really had fun creating these characters, telling these storylines, because I'd had this kind of unique experience of working in the Middle East, living in the Middle East, and working alongside these really strong Arab women.
I really like that. Have you heard of an sorry, new tongue breaking it in. Have you heard of a English historian called Helen Fry by any chance?
No, I don't think so.
Please check her out. I've had her on my channel. She wrote a book called Women in Intelligence,
Okay.
and she's an advocate for this kind of thing. I'm not going to go on too much, but it's definitely something that I think you'd certainly find interesting. some of the work she's done, some of the books she's written, and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
but going back to your book, and I'm going to go away from serious just for a moment. Has there ever been anybody you've met in the field and you kind of really couldn't stand them, so you thought, right, I'm going to write you into the book and I'm going to give you a long and painful death,
Yeah.
or something along those lines to kind of for your own satisfaction?
Yeah. So never in the field, but definitely at headquarters. I
Mm-hmm.
butted heads. I had a manager that this woman was clearly, she had some issues. And
Mm-hmm.
when I first got in, she was kind of this way to all the younger women. I was like, 23 when I started the CIA, very young. And she just had it in for a lot of the younger women. She just hated us and she wanted to make life as hard as she possibly could. I recognized that it was probably because life was made so difficult for her. She felt like she needed to do that to us. She needed to kind of, I guess, repeat the hazing process. But it was very counterproductive to our mission because it wasn't about the mission to her. It was about how can I get credit for things and how can I further my own career and how can I leverage what these women are working really hard and doing to make myself look good. And so that was hard. She also she like pulled me in her office the very first day on the job and she was like, I don't understand what you're doing here. You didn't go to an Ivy League school. Why are you here? And I thought, that's really weird. Like, I was seriously, the DI, to be honest with you, the director of intelligence, the analysts, they do recruit heavily from Ivy League schools, but not necessarily director of operations. So, I think that the emphasis there is, of course, I went to college and I have degrees and everything, but the emphasis is more about people skills and about, your ability to interact with people effectively and less more about like your book smarts, like, how
Yeah.
prestigious, of and I think they've maybe found that out over time. The CIA has historically always recruited from Ivy League schools, and maybe they saw over time, maybe that shouldn't just be the pool of candidates that we pull from because, sometimes they might be coming from, really privileged backgrounds where it's hard for them to relate to the individuals that we're speaking to on a daily basis. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how it ended up with me working in intelligence. It wasn't the traditional sense for me. It's normally the likes of MI6 and MI5. It's a very much an old boys club, and if your grandpa was in and your dad was in, and then you stand a chance you'd be in. It's usually a case of they're kind of plucked from Oxford or Cambridge and that kind of thing. So very much the same. With me, it was very different. It was a case of I worked my way through different departments, and it was kind of weird. I learned about gathering intelligence, and then utilized what I'd learned about working in the world of intelligence to get myself deeper into it, and end up getting there. It's a long and convoluted story, so I won't bore you with it. But I was definitely part of a new breed. So what would you say if there's anybody, especially females right now, that are looking at joining CIA or approached by CIA like you were? What would be your advice to them, going into it afresh?
Yeah, I mean, just be really going in with your eyes open and understand what you're getting into. I mean, especially if you're going to work as the director of operations, you're really expected to live overseas for the first 10 years. You actually have to sign a document saying, I'm willing to go anywhere in the world for the first 10 years because they invest so much in you as far as training goes. I mean, it's like a year worth of training, and then you have language training on top of that. So just know like what you're getting into. And, I don't want that to scare you. I don't want to scare anybody from applying, but just, I think knowing that that's a real possibility for you. But that being said, there's all sorts of jobs at the CIA where you don't have to live overseas for the first 10 years. If you're okay with not being in the direct, the action of everything. There's the support, there's the technological positions, there's all sorts of positions that you can kind of stay stateside. But yeah, and then know that you're going to have to work twice as hard, which is probably the same in any other industry than your male counterparts. It's very much still a good old boys network. All the leadership is male for the to a large extent. So just know that you're going to have to deal with that. That never really bothered me. I never really saw that as an impasse, but it was unfortunate at the time that there was not more women in power. And I think that was for the same reasons across other walks of life, other career paths, is that, oftentimes women are the ones who have to kind of take care of the children and raise them. And, that's where their priorities lie. And so that can be really tough on a career, in particular, like this one, where so much is demanded of you, not just like, okay, you work 10, 12-hour days, but also like from a mental health standpoint. For me, it got to the point, because I worked Iraq, I worked Afghanistan, Pakistan, kind of back to back. I was just so overworked and so spent that by the time I had my third child, I was like, I just cannot manage this anymore. I cannot multitask anymore. So I knew my kids were going to win out in terms of priorities. So, and I was also fortunate that I could quit my job at that time, but not everybody has that privilege. So, so just know what you're getting into, but don't let that scare you either. Lean in. If it's something you really want to do, just lean in.
Yeah, I'm going back to your book. I keep flip flopping here between one and the other. Sorry about this. I'll get onto one subject and stay on it in a while. I just every time I think of a question, another one pops into my head. I'm a nightmare. Sure. So yeah, going back to your book, how did you fare with like the pre-publication review, which a lot of people mistakenly call approval? But was that a major hurdle for you?
No. It was quite easy. Because my book is fiction, I didn't come into any kind of trouble with the publication review board. Mine's not a let me tell you everything I ever did at the CIA kind of book. I've read those books. They're great. They're really interesting, but that's not this kind of book. My book is more kind of fiction based on facts. So drawing from my experiences, drawing from what it's like to be a female in intelligence, but telling the story that I wanted to tell. I believe that fiction is something that you should be able to get lost in to a certain respect. I think people read a lot of fiction just to get out of their daily lives and be able to do, to escape. So there's a good deal of romance and adventure and everything in it. So I wanted to create that for my readers because that's something that I really love to, escape into is fiction. So I didn't want it to become so serious that people are like, gosh, this is like reading the news. And then also that kept me out of trouble, right? Because I'm not talking about real events. I created this war. I've created the syndicate is the name of the intelligence organization, which is like a conglomerate of intelligence organizations all working together to achieve a certain goal. So it's drawing from what I actually encountered in the CIA, but that's not all it is. So.
Yeah, I like that. Who would your ideal audience be for this? If you who do you see your reader as kind of,
Yeah, I think anyone who likes spy novels and also anybody who maybe likes historical fiction. I think that you might really fall in with this book, and romance readers, male, female. I have had older gentlemen, like in their 60s, just pull me aside and be like, "Oh, I've loved your book," and then I've women who are like 16, 17, you're like, oh, I love this book so much. So it really, I don't know if there's like a set audience, just someone who enjoys fiction.
Oh, brilliant. I love that when there's chemistry between two characters in a book, and you can see it kind of getting closer and closer throughout the book. So yeah. So I take it romance is a genre that's a favorite for you then when you read.
I'm sorry.
I take it romance is a genre that's a favorite for you when you read.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like romance.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife's exactly the same. She eats books. She's every time we go out, she's buying 2 or 3 or Amazon parcels that she tries to hide from me all the time with more and more books in. So, yeah, and a kind of I was going to ask a question. I'm gonna leave it. Let's go another way. Yeah, with the work that you did, and again, the public perception of CIA, it can be so varied. And I have noticed you speak to some people and you say, oh, I work in the intelligence industry, and they go, oh, that's great, great that you're doing something of service, and you go, brilliant, thank you. And then you get others, they'll turn around and they'll say, oh, so you're one of those mind-altering kind of crazy, and they go off on some path where they think we're trying to create monsters to take over the world and work with aliens daily. Right. Do you get much of that, like kind of when you talk about your career?
Yeah, there are a lot of conspiracy theorists out there about what the CIA has been involved with. The JFK assassination is a big one that I always get
Mm.
questions about. And of course, President Trump has decided to declassify a lot of those findings. So there's been a lot, and a lot of questions surrounding that. I, I try to tell people, listen, like I think there's this false sense of how much power the CIA has and how much time they have.
Mm.
We hardly have enough time to go after the bad guys out there, like, or enough resources, or without, so for them to think that we're, following them to the grocery store or the nail salon every day, or go, following your gym, or we don't have, unless you're involved in terrorism, criminal activity, drug trade. We just don't care. We just don't care what you're doing. We don't care who you're meeting with. We don't care anything. So I just, or if you're a government official with, access to classified information, yeah, to a foreign intelligence service, you might be interesting, but you're not interesting to us, the
Mm.
CIA. We're not in the business of recruiting American citizens. We're in the business of collecting foreign intelligence. That means our mission is purely overseas. Now, FBI, if you're worried about, domestic surveillance, the FBI is who you need to talk to. But unless, again, you have a direct nexus to terrorism, I can't tap your phones. I can't tap your email accounts. I have to go through a whole legal process in order to do that. So we are not spying on you unless you're doing those things. So you don't have anything to worry about as long as you're not terrorist.
Yeah.
It's that simple. We're not spying. We don't have the manpower. We don't care. So
Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. Where you said we don't care. I mean, that really is the bottom line when it comes
yeah,
down to it. We don't want to go looking through your cat pictures or
yeah,
finding out that your auntie's invited you to a barbecue next week, and we're
yeah,
not interested in, in anything like that. We're interested in kind of doing our job. So yeah, it's surprising the amount of misconceptions out there. I think I read the other day that there are enough words on what was it, Twitter or X as it is now, in a day written to fill a 1 trillion-page book. Can you imagine having to monitor
oh,
all of that? And I mean, it would be just absolute insanity. And like you say, there are more important things, and everybody seems to, or a lot of people seem to think, because it's an organization that deals in secrets, that it's all cloak and dagger and secrecy and whatever else. And like you say, it's not what it is. It's about finding out what is a danger to us, our world, our society, and trying to kind of stop it from being a danger any longer, one way or another.
hey, absolutely,
so,
absolutely, yeah.
so, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give to 23-year-old Brittany?
Ooh, what a good question. Um, don't take life so seriously.
Yeah.
Get out alive. Don't take it too seriously. Take it one day at a time. I think it could be really overwhelming doing that kind of work because they make you believe, and I truly believed it at one point. Like if I don't make it to work today, if I call in sick, the whole world's gonna crumble.
Mm,
Life as you know it in America will end. You feel this pressure, and then you feel like, oh, I can't ever leave this work because no one knows what I do about this terrorist network or whatever. Like there are young people looking to stand in your place. Like you're replaceable. You are replaceable. Don't yeah, don't fret about the fact that, if you, and I don't say that to say your work doesn't matter. Of course it
mm,
matters, but there are a lot of people, you're just one part of the whole operation. I think, when you watch these James Bond movies, nothing could be further from the truth that there's one guy saving the world. When in
mm,
actuality, it's a lot of different people with different expertise and different intelligence disciplines. You've got your SIGINT person, you've got your geospatial analyst, you've got your, the human side. You've got all these different parts coming together to accomplish a mission. It's not just you by yourself. And I think the earlier you learn that in your career, the better, because you realize the importance of working together as a team and being a team player. And being able to learn from other people, I think, is a quality that any intelligence officer, especially a young one, needs to understand. Like, I cannot tell you the operations I was in, and had I not listened to the more senior folks that had been there for a while, had been doing the work for a while, we would have been in deep doo doo had we
Yeah.
not listened to them. So, yeah. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think I remember receiving something like like a note thing on social media once off a friend of mine, and it simply read, "Your position will be posted before your obituary," or something like that. And I thought, yeah, unfortunately, that's the world we live in. That's very true. So, so yeah, and what about more books? Have you got more on the way? Is there a part two coming?
I do. Yeah. So I have one book with my agent currently. She's reading it. And then I have a book coming out this fall. It's called The Patriot's Daughter. It's all about this woman named Ava Anderson. And she joins the CIA, and she learns that her mother was um, not only a CIA officer, but also a spy for the Russians.
Oh, wow.
And, kind of what her journey's like. She's sent on a mission to Moscow to help dismantle a huge terrorist plot in the homeland, and how she kind of navigates figuring out what truly happened to her mother, who she suspect died while in KGB custody. What really happened to her, and who her father is, while helping to dismantle this terrorist plot. So having a lot of fun with that, and that comes out this fall. So really
Oh,
excited to see that on the shelves.
the good old dependable Russians, best of
Yes.
frenemies for so many years.
Yeah. Kind of
Yeah.
shifting. My last book was Middle East, and this is kind of Russia. So
Oh, brilliant.
I'm,
Do you
I'm
speak any Russian?
no, no, no.
No.
Yeah.
It's a difficult language, but I learned enough Russian to get me by. But for
Uh,
some reason, I could French I struggled with. I picked up
do.
bits of Spanish. I picked up bits of German, enough German to get me by.
Yeah.
And other languages, but French I really really struggled with. So
Oh,
congratulations on that, because
yeah.
you. Yeah, for you, you obviously you did really really well with it, and it was a nightmare for me.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has their different strengths, and Russian's not an easy language to learn at all. Either is Chinese. I mean, I have a lot of respect for people who can learn those languages, because you're dealing with a whole other alphabet. So I don't even
Yeah.
know how you go about that. So that's wonderful that you can speak some, though.
That's a very difficult one, and I mean, like my daughter, by the age of 5, she could count in 9 different languages.
Wow.
Yeah,
That,
she's pretty amazing.
that's so.
uh, yeah, she does good with that, and actually one of the easiest ones for her to learn was Japanese. Spanish she took to straight away. She got that one no problem. I think German and French she was okay with. Greek she struggled with a little bit. Farsi wasn't the strongest, but she was like I say, she's really good with that, and she's pretty good with languages overall. To be fair,
That's wonderful. Such good quality to have.
definitely. So, what are the plans for you in the future? Because what I'd like to do is mention to everybody you have an Insta page that you put regular posts out, which is really really popular. You know. Well, we'll start with where can people find you with that? What's the handle? Is it called for Instagram?
Yeah, so it's at former spy and the number one. Um,
Brilliant.
Find me on Instagram, and I talk all about my experiences while at the CIA. I provide some analysis on current events. I talk about the books I have coming out. So definitely check it out. It's the same handle on TikTok as well, if you prefer TikTok, at former spy the number one.
Brilliant. I'm still experimenting with TikTok. I did put something on there the other day, and it did quite well. So I might start trying a few more. So I might see if I can pick your brains for tips a little bit later.
Yes, absolutely. Happy to help.
Fantastic. And so with the book, do you have any other further projects you're working on as well that the world should know about that you'd like to announce, or are you just going to see how
Yeah,
things go?
yeah, just the book. Just the book. I have my day job too. So that keeps me pretty busy, in addition to writing novels and all that good stuff. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I know that obviously you've got a lot going on, and and thank you for your time. It's been wonderful. Is there anything that you think I should have asked you that I didn't?
I don't think so.
I
This
think
is
so.
a pleasure. Thank you so much, Gavin.
No problem. Well, thank you. And for everybody watching, I will put links down below with Brittany's social medias as well as links to the book. Check it out. Please have a look at it and follow Brittany on all the social media sites as well. Brittany, thank you so much for joining us.
Gavin, take care.